Okie dokie. So here we are trying to do a conglomeration of a Shabbat service, Parashat Vayikra, the beginning of a new book. Beginnings are always interesting, aren't they? As well as the Liberation series, part 3 of 4. So the way that it will work today is we'll start off with the Liberation series ideas and then we'll go into the Shabbat service. Okay, let's start straight away. I want to start with a quote. I'm going to quote, there's I think 6 different ideas, actually 7 ideas, one for each day of the week for this week of Shabbat. First one by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Now, I was explaining to a student this week. You want to know if someone influences some people in this world. So yes, you can have the Donald Trumps and the Barack Obamas, and I don't want to take away from anyone in particular. Yes, people have done things in the world, but after they die, how many people remember them? How many people study what they wrote, what they did? Whereas Rav Nachman of Breslov, he lived under 40 years old in the late 1700s into the early 1800s. And he died and he said, people should visit my grave on Rosh Hashanah. Still today, 200 years later, 50,000 people from around the world visit this man's grave every year. Can you imagine? That's the influence that this person had on multiple generations. What I like about Rav Nachman of Breslov is that whatever all the other rabbis say, he says the polar opposite. 180 degrees normally, he says the exact opposite of what you expect a rabbi to say. So what is his quote about Passover and about liberation, liberty, freedom? This is Rav Nachman of Breslov. The exodus from Egypt occurs being in every era, in every year, and every day. What Rav Nachman of Breslov is not trying to say that it's a big revelation that people are enslaved. What he was trying to say, in my opinion, is be aware that the story of coming out of Egypt wasn't for Moses and his generation, at least only. It was for me and you in every generation, because all of us are enslaved at some shape or form. And I was thinking to myself, when we read the Haggalah, Ki'ilu yitzatem miMitzrayim, as if you left Egypt, what exactly are we meant to be thinking about today? So one aspect is we're meant to be thinking about coming out of Egypt. But it's more, none of us have been to Egypt. Matter of fact, there's a law in the Torah that you shouldn't go back to live in Egypt. So, how much are we meant to be thinking about coming out of the land of Egypt? So it seems to be, at least according to Rav Nachman of Breslov, that we're more to be focused on our own lives and what freedoms we can aspire to. First thing that I think most people, including myself many times, fail in terms of being a slave and not wanting to be free is life becomes a routine. And in life becoming a routine, because routines are not bad things. Routines are actually very, very helpful things most of the time. But when you're doing the routine as a routine, that's when it becomes a problem. When every Passover is just let's make the charoset and let's eat the gefilte fish. Or every Shavuot is let's make the cheesecake, etc., etc. Now, I'm not trying to say those things are bad. We should love the cheesecake on Shavuot and we should love the matzah balls on Passover. But don't let the routine become a routine, because that's enslavement. To be free means to be free when you're making that charoset, as if it's the first time you're ever going to make your own charoset. When you eat that gefilte fish, whenever, once a year, twice a year, however many times you eat it, it's as if you've been looking forward to it the whole year. That's when you find meaning in your life, when the routine of life doesn't become routine, because routine is not a bad thing to have. It's a good thing to know how many hours you sleep, etc., etc. So that's one way that I thought Rav Nachman was speaking to us of the exodus from Egypt occurs in every era and every year and every day. Don't let your routines become just a routine. Have some excitement for them. Second thing, find personal meaning, not just in getting rid of the routine or making sure there's some extra oomph in the routine, but find personal meaning in that. And it's hard to do that because that involves being honest with yourself. If you want to really know where you're at and what you still are fearful of and anxious of and guilty of, and all the things that try to enslave you, it takes looking at yourself in the mirror and really making an effort to try and get out of that slavery. And it's hard to do that. I'm just going to mention one liberating thought, which I know definitely, again, I've had this many times in my life, and I've noticed it in so many people as well. And you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This is from a very famous marketer, I believe. It's called Seth Godin. He wrote, "Liberate yourself from the need to be right." And it's a hard thing admitting that you're wrong. Not only is it a hard thing that admitting that you're wrong, but it's a hard thing capitulating or compromising when you indeed know that you are right. But it's not about being right always. Sometimes it's about just finding an audience that wants to hear you. And if they don't want to hear you, then even if you're right, don't speak. And that can be an enslaving process of always wanting to be right and always needing to be right. And I'm sure that everyone's got a family member or a friend who can never stop the argument. They have to be right. They have to take it to the nth level. And I think that that's a little bit of I don't want to say it's an ego, but it's some type of slavery that people take on where they're not free to just be with other people's opinions. They always have to feel dominating. And I think that that's almost like a slave mentality, that they're uneasy about being, faced with other opinions. So that's what Rav Nachman was saying. Every generation is a slavery. Figure out what is your one. That's the first thought. Number two, freedom from thought. Now, this is the East and the China and India and others, they focus on this a lot, getting rid of your thoughts. Again, I'm quoting you Rav Nachman of Breslov. I love this quote. Listen to how clever Rav Nachman is. You are wherever your thoughts are. So make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. I'll say that again. Okay. You are wherever your thoughts are. So make sure your thoughts are where you want them to be. And obviously, that's a hard thing to be in control of your thoughts. Some of us get into routines of thinking, and some of those routines are very, very negative. We speak to ourselves in our brain. We're not even aware that we're speaking to ourselves. Like we could be watching a movie, and all this time we're thinking of like, this person ripped me off today, and I'm gonna go and shout at him tomorrow, and da-da-da-da-da. Sometimes those thoughts just take care, that we're not in control. And that's a harsh one to deal with. What can help with that? How do we liberate ourselves from our thoughts? So I'll tell you my favorite four, which have been told to me. I mean, I'm not a discoverer. These have been told to me, and I just discovered it through learning from others. So one thing is meditation. So that's the Far East taught us, that meditation helps just sitting down and breathing and trying not to think, or not even trying not to think, just whatever comes up is okay, and just let it flow and let it flow in and let it flow out. So that's one way to make sure your thoughts are where you want to be, is just let them go wherever, and hopefully you can come back to the thought that you want to at some point. That's more getting rid of thought. But another way is steering thought. And that was more the rabbinic way, at least for the last 1,000 years, which is learn Torah, involve your mind with things that you actually want to be concerned about. And therefore that will become your default setting. So when you're watching that movie and your mind goes somewhere else, at least it's on subject matter that you don't mind it being upon, as opposed to subject matter that you just would prefer not to be thinking about. So that's the second way, is learning Torah. How else can we liberate our thoughts? One thing, the last two, and these ones I've felt personally, is be busy, be productive. A lot of people, they dwell in their misery and depression over, they dwell at home, they don't want to go to work. If they're teenagers, they don't want to go to school. They become very apathetic. And I always tell people in those situations, and again, I've spoken to psychologists about this as well, which is be busy. Regardless of where your mind is at, make sure you're productive. Because if you're not doing that, then your mind goes into super speed and super mode of demolishing yourself. So at least when you're busy and productive, those thoughts might coming back every 20 minutes or an hour or however many times. But at least you have the rest of the 19 minutes before that 20th minute, at least it was involved somewhere else. And this is my favorite one. How else do we make sure that our thoughts are where we want to be? Move your body. Be very physically energized, exercised as much as possible. I always say the quickest way to get out of your head is move your body. And it's hard for a mind to stay awake at nights for hours and hours and hours when its body has literally done as much as it can in a day. And we learn from children about this. I mean, children sleep like angels when they've had lots and lots of exercise. But if they haven't had a lot of exercise, they often have a very hard time falling asleep, and not even that, not a good sleep. So yes, move your body to liberate yourself from your mind. That is what Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said. You are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. Okay, last quote of Rabbi Nachman, freedom number 3. So far, whoever arrived a little bit late, we spoke about, being honest with yourself and what you're enslaved to. So that's called freedom from insincerity. Then we went on to freedom of thought. And now we're on to our third one, which is freedom of self-esteem. This is Rabbi Nachman of Breslov's third and last quote that I'm quoting today. Even if you can't sing well, sing. Sing to yourself. Sing in the privacy of your home, but sing. And Rav Nachman obviously was a Hasidic Rebbe. So lots of his people were singing, that was the way that they did it in the 1700s. The Hasidim got through to God from dancing and singing and whistling and all the different stories that you've heard. What is he trying to say? Sing to yourself in the privacy of your home. No one can take away your own holy private space. I know that this is what they taught me in India when you go to the yoga studios and they say to you, whatever's going on in the Himalayas outside, the birds chirping, Pakistan attacking India, China attacking whoever, whatever is going on in the surroundings where you are, just make sure that the 4 corners of your yoga mat, that is your holy space. Don't let anything else from the external of your 4 corners of your yoga mat impact you in any way, because this is the time that you've dedicated to yourself. And I think Rav Nachman was saying a very similar thing. Even in the privacy of your home, sing. Make sure that your own personal space is always considered a holy space. I know that Rav Nachman of Breslov taught, and I've even seen this of some of his followers in Jerusalem. I saw once this at the Western Wall. Rav Nachman would look at his hand, not for a minute, not for 5 minutes, for an hour at a time. And he would just wonder how amazing this idea is that I've got 5 fingers and a hand and I can move a wrist and it's got veins and arteries and nails and which grow and whatever else it was that he was thinking about, because he wanted to teach his students that you should admire your own being in as much form as possible, including even your hand. And I told you, I saw one of his followers looking at a hand. Everyone else was singing at the Western Wall for 40 minutes, and he was just looking at his hand. That's the first idea that I want to share of Rav Nachman's singing idea. Second one is, yes, you do have a terrible voice. So do I, so do many, many people out there in the world. But that doesn't matter. It takes away zero amount that you don't know how to sing. You might be like 2 left feet when it comes to your voice, or you might have 2 left feet when it comes to surfing like me, or whatever the case is. But the point being, it doesn't matter what you are, because you can enjoy yourself as much as you are. Laugh at yourself. I've always found in things that I'm really not good at. I used to be embarrassed about these things and etc. And then I realized, just laugh at yourself, even if it's in your own room, at how it turned out, how whatever you were trying to do turned out. You tried your best, whatever it was, and you just have to enjoy yourself for what that is. And that's what Rabbi Nachman's teaching us. Sing in the privacy of your home, but at least sing. I have an unknown quote that I'd like to quote, which is definitely much like Rabbi Nachman. Be yourself, because an original is worth more than a copy. Okay, and I think that that's a good idea to remember. So freedom of self-esteem means don't be a slave to the idea that you can't do it. Maybe you can't do it, but you can at least enjoy it while trying, and at least in the privacy of your home, if you're not strong enough to do it in front of others. Okay, so that's a very important slavery that we have, that we are slaves to our self-esteem. Okay, next one, number 4. Freedom from blame. Wow. How many times do we blame people? How many times do we like to be the victim in our lives? Parents to children, children to parents, business partners to other business partners, etc. Okay, I made a mistake. There is another quote of Rabbi Nachman. That's the 4th quote of Rabbi Nachman. And when I'm saying this, imagine his Yiddish, him saying this with some like Yiddish undertone in the 1700s. Don't over fret over married children. They will take care of themselves. And I don't know how to speak Yiddish exactly. I mean, I understand the bissel, but imagine if you would say that, like some Yiddish idiom. Don't ever fret over your married children. They will take care of themselves. Now, obviously, there was a little bit of humor in that. It could be, he could have said it about any children, don't fret over children. But he's particularly chose like married children, because you hope that when the time people are married, they're a little bit responsible and that they can take care of themselves. The idea being, it's not a bad thing to worry about other people and to be concerned, but you can never be concerned enough for some people. And children oftentimes will keep wanting, taking until the very, very end. Why? Because that's what the parents allowed them to do from day one. And it's hard to get something out of their routine that they've been used to. I read a newspaper about 2-3 years ago that some 45-year-old man in California was suing his parents, who kicked him out the house because he's lived with them until he was 45. And he refused to leave. So they had to sue him. And they went to court and a whole thing. I can't exactly remember who won. I think the parents won. But the idea being, some people will abuse the rights that have been given to them, whatever form it is. And one needs to realize that is a type of slavery, where you think that you can always help other people's problems. And you don't acknowledge that it's also their problems. It's not your problem. And you become a slave to always worrying about other people. Again, there's a difference between being concerned healthily and properly worrying about others too much. And we all need to be aware of where we are slaves and who our masters are, no matter what age they are. How can you get rid of that? Well, obviously you need to put some types of limits so that people don't abuse you, and rather spend less time, but empower them to be, more responsible than spending more time and letting them be more of a victim. And here's a quote about that. Set boundaries. Drama may knock, but you don't have to open the door. And that's from some woman's magazine in the 1970s. I just thought it was some random thing, but it's quite cute. Drama may knock, but you don't have to open the door. I wouldn't say drama may knock. Drama will always knock. There will always be drama in every relationship at some point. And one just has to decide at that point, how much are you invested and how much are you helping the situation by helping and how much are you not helping the situation by helping. And that's a balance that we all have to do. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5, how am I doing on time? Okay, we can still finish all 7. Freedom from wishful thinking. Well, wishful thinking is a good thing. You know, it's good to be positive, it's good to be ambitious, but one needs to be realistic as well. Said by the famous and very intuitive Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. Michelle, if you're still there, I know that you like his quotes a lot. I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. So clever, I'll say it again. I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. What does that mean? Well, I think what he was trying to say is don't blame God. Yes, he wasn't trying to say you shouldn't pray. Actually, Rabbi Heschel's very much into prayer completely. But I think what he's trying to say is don't blame God for all your problems, because only blame yourself for your problems. And yes, some problems are not our choices. Yeah, some of us are born with deformities. Some of us are born with mental issues. Some of us, our chemistry is wrong. Some of us, our chemistry was right and it becomes wrong and then it becomes right again. And some of it's from our own things to our bodies. Whatever the case is, you can't, it's not a healthy approach to blame anyone, but especially God. And the reason why it's not a good idea to blame God is because that particular one will go forever. Because you're never going to be able to ask God and hear God's word saying to you, this is exactly what I was trying to teach you, blah, 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 blah. So if you get in the habit of blaming God, that one can go for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Rather, start using your feet. Go do things in the world. Go find your spark. Go see what are you doing wrong that's making you unhappy. And maybe God will send you the answers once you start that process. God is just waiting for you to do the door, to open the door for you, but you have to do that first effort. And another anonymous quote that I like, which is very similar to Rabbi Heschel's quote, responsibility is accepting that you are the cause and the solution of the matter. It's not enough to think that you're the cause, but you also have to acknowledge that you are the solution. I was speaking to someone recently the other day, you know, not an old person, and that person was saying to me, so helpless in life, you know, in their 20s or 30s or whatever it was, so helpless, no hope in the world. Why is everything wrong? You know, everybody hates me, and it's for good reason. I didn't do what I was meant to do. I got into this thing, whatever the case is. Everybody's right to hate me, and I'm right to hate me, and whatever. Don't do that to yourself. No one should do that to yourself. And at the same time, when you have that, don't think that it's coming from somewhere else. Yes, obviously, psychologists help, and teachers help, and spiritual healers can help you, and parents can help you, and friends can help you to a point. But wishful thinking starts off with you using your legs, and you'll be surprised how many people will help you on the way, but don't just leave it in the form of prayer. Okay, next, number 6, freedom from laziness. Are we slaves to being lazy? Well, I know that I enjoy watching soccer. I said it aloud, okay? I enjoy watching soccer. I remember when I was in yeshiva, one of the rabbis told me that a famous rabbi in Matzersdorf in Israel, who died, you know, alav shalom, a very famous rabbi, he said at the end of his life, he said, you know, it took me 50 years to stop thinking about baseball. That's what he admitted to at the end of his life. Now, I guess he was trying to say that in a way that he loved baseball, but he came to a point that wasn't so important to him. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying I enjoy soccer. I'm not apologizing for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I enjoy it. But am I in a routine of just watching soccer because I've got nothing else to do? Or am I passionately choosing to watch soccer at the games that I want to watch because I think that that's the maximum amount that I can gain from that hour and a half of whatever it is? No man is, so I'll quote you, this is Rabbi Heschel's idea again about freedom from laziness. No man is free who is not a master of himself. The more liberties we enjoy, the more discipline we need. So the more liberties we enjoy, the more discipline we need. Now, I don't know if this is laziness, but it's more about self-control. Now that I'm reading it the second time. No man is free who is not a master of himself. You need to gain that self-control. But the more you become free, so the more liberties you have, the more discipline you need. Yes, of course, in a vacuum, it would be lovely to think that freedom means you don't need to do anything. Yes, you wake up into the royal family, you don't have to do anything, you never have to pick up your pinky, you're going to have £1 billion in the bank. You never have to do anything, you don't have to learn cooking because you're going to be getting five-star meals your whole life, whatever the case is. But that's not the way that it works. The way that it works is when you develop freedoms, whatever it is, most people who do that too quickly actually end up hurting themselves. You become free. So, let me do this, let me do that. Let me see how far my body can go. Let me see how far my mind can go. Let me see how far blah, 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 blah goes. Those people, the extremes of those people end up sex addicts, drug addicts, if they make it even to 40 years old, whatever the case is. So yes, with the freedom that comes to us, there has to be a development of self-control. And if we are slave to the idea of freedom, that freedom is just that feeling of always feeling free and doing whatever you want, that can be abused as well. And we become slaves to that freedom. So I would call this more, not so much freedom from laziness, but freedom from freedom. Make sure that you're free in the freedom that you choose, that you're developing your self-control while you're doing that, because otherwise freedom goes too far, of whatever case it is. And it might not just be drugs and sex and whatever else, but it could be things like speaking, that you think you can say whatever you want, whenever you want, how you want. And there is a source of that being healthy at some level. But if it's just free, where it's not with self-control at the same time, it goes too far and people start getting hurt. And ultimately, when that happens, we start getting hurt. You need self-control in an out-of-control world. That is an interesting quote as well. Last one, number 7 for Shabbos. So before I go into number 7, I'll quickly review all the ones we've done. Freedom from insincerity, that was Rav Nachman's. Exodus of Egypt happens in every generation, in every day of your life. Be sincere to what you are a slave to. Number 2, freedom from thought. You are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. Learn Torah, meditate, be busy, move your body, do something to get yourself out of your mind. Freedom of self-esteem. Even if you can't sing well, sing, at least in the privacy of your home, sing. Make sure that you don't let the world let you down. Your yoga mat is your holy space. Your home is your holy space. Always remember, no one can interfere with that inner intimate self. Number 4, freedom from blame. Don't ever fret over married children. They will take care of themselves. Yes, make sure that you don't overburden yourself and become a slave while trying to help out the world. Number 6, freedom from laziness, or maybe freedom from freedom, where yes, become free, get the liberties, try and take yourself as far as you can go, but build your self-control at the same time. Where does self-control begin? It begins with daily efforts. The small things on a daily basis. I know when it comes to kindness, I've made an effort for the last year, since I've come to South Africa, of trying cognitively to do one kind thing for someone a day. I try every day, I think, what's the one kind thing that I've done for someone? Now, sometimes I do many kind things, but at least one kind thing I try to do a day. That's where self-control starts, daily efforts. But of course, real self-control, those daily efforts will take decades to really master self-control. There is no end. And that's why it's got to start somewhere, but you don't need to get there today. The result will be at the end of your life. And that's number 6. Lastly, number 7, I've gone from Rav Nachman of Breslov, I've gone through 2 of Rabbi Heschel. Now we're going to go to Rabbi Soloveitchik. This is freedom from holding stress inside. So we're trying to liberate ourselves from the stress we hold. This is from his book, The Lonely Man of Faith, which is my favorite book of Rabbi Soloveitchik. I will speak that I may find relief. For there is a redemptive quality for an agitative mind in the spoken word. And a tormented soul finds peace in confessing. Unbelievable. It's almost as if he's saying he's a tormented soul. This is what Rabbi Soloveitchik is saying. And he's saying, I will speak that I may find relief. For there is a redemptive quality for an agitative mind in the spoken word. And a tormented soul finds peace in confessing. Yes, of course, if you want to liberate yourself from the stress that you have, you don't have to deal with it on your own. There are many people out there. The blessing, allow another human being's blessing to help you with your stress. On the one hand, don't let them stress you out. But on the other hand, if you are already stressed out, find people who can alleviate that stress and help you get out of it, whether it's through making prayers. I've often found that making your own prayers is some type of therapeutic process of getting out of your stress. Writing to yourself. I once met a psychologist who tells his people when they're blaming God, write a letter to God, blame him, write it. And then he burns up the paper after they've written it. Yes, write, pray, meditate, go to psychologists. Don't be embarrassed to go for help. Seek out friends and teachers who you think can help you with the things that you need liberating from. It's a hard thing for some people to actually go to a psychologist. It's like a big self-esteem issue. I'm embarrassed to show my shortcomings. But at the same time, it's almost empowering another human being to help you. You're actually doing as much help to that person as they're doing to you, because you're bringing out their creative content of how they can help the world. So those are 7 ideas of liberation. When we're talking about Passover and feeling a slave and what it means to be a slave, and Rav Nachman's every day of our lives is an enslavement, how do we get rid of those things? Well, be honest with ourselves. What are those slave things, and make the efforts whatever is required. I went through 7 different ideas today, and I hope that at least one of them was helpful to you to think about during this next Passover next weekend. We'll now go to the Shabbat service.